Hey guys, it's Lauren. Welcome to my channel. So today is going to be a review of Morphe's Brunch Babe palette, this gorgeous palette right here, and we're also going to do a comparison test against the new Anastasia Norvina palette. When I first saw Morphe's Brunch Babe palette, I just could not help but, well, first of all, admire the beauty of this palette. It's absolutely gorgeous. There's like so many pops of like pinks and purples, and you have your warm tones in here, and just so many gorgeous colors. I just knew I had to have it. But I also couldn't get over the resemblance to the Norvina palette, so I knew I had to jump on it. This was available on my Octoly's free store. I finally am a part of Octoly. I'm so excited, and this was one of the first things that became available that really intrigued me. I love a cool tone palette, and I just thought this was so pretty. I just love that pop of pink in here. The shade Parfait just like spoke to me. So I just knew I had to put these against each other, see which one performed better, and to see if this truly is a dupe for the Anastasia Norvina palette. So right off the bat, you notice a lot of similarities between these two palettes. They're both cool tone palettes, and they both have these like bright pops of color. They're both a mix of shimmers and mattes. There's a couple of apparent differences though. So in the Morphe palette, the top shade, that shade Parfait, that bright pink shade, you're not going to get that in the Anastasia palette, and vice versa with the bottom shade in the Anastasia palette, that shade Soul, that periwinkle shade. I feel like they're the two standout differences, just those two bright pops of color. But generally, I feel like the color scheme is pretty similar, and if you're a cool tone fan and if you're drawn into the Norvina palette, I feel like the Morphe palette was just as appealing. So I had to go ahead and pick this up. So I ordered it. It took like a week or two to get here, and I could not wait to dig into this. So first we'll go through and compare the shades. We'll try to dupe some of the shades, and then in the end I'm going to show you this eye look. So I'm actually wearing the Anastasia palette on one side, and then I tried to dupe it with the Morphe palette on the other side. So you'll see how that goes. But let's first talk about the shades that I was not able to dupe. These are the shades that are not in the Norvina palette. The first one being this silvery shade. Really pretty. It just is so creamy. You don't get a ton of fallout with these. They're really reflective. They're just so nice. The other four I was able to dupe. This shade Donuts is not in the Norvina palette, but it's so pretty. This and the shade Bellini, I've been wearing them both alone all over the lid, and I just think they're absolutely gorgeous. This is the shade Bellini. This is more of like on the peachier side. They're really creamy, but you do have to build them up a little bit. This is a little bit more sheer, so I love it just for every day. And then here's Donuts. Donuts is more on like the blush pink, more like a dusty rose. So pretty. And Squad I was able to dupe, and then there were two down here that I couldn't dupe. Totes, and then this Black Coffee. So the Black Coffee is just a true black shade. It's a little sheer, it can get a little patchy, but let's see if we can build it up. So yeah, you can build it up to get like an opaque black. So it's really intense, really super black, a true black shadow. And then this shade Totes, or Toots, however you pronounce it, is almost like a milk chocolate brown. Again, a little patchy, but you can build it up. I like this color. It's slightly darker than the shade Vignettes up here. So these shades were not in the Norvina palette, but I really think they add something to this palette. The dark black, you can obviously smoke out any eye, so I like the addition of any black in any palette actually. I really miss a black if a palette doesn't have a black, so I appreciate that. The two pinks I love all over the lid. I don't really wear silvers too much. I feel like I wore that a ton in high school, but I don't wear them so much anymore. And the shadow up here, this milky brown, I feel like it's very similar to Patio, so I feel like they could have done without that top shade, but I just love these pinky shades, and I like the addition of the black. Okay, and then for the shadows that were pretty close dupes to the Norvina palette, the second shade Weekend is very similar to the shade Base in the Norvina palette. That's that second shade in here. They're both neutral toned eyeshadows, something to start off your eye look. Weekend is more on the matte side, and Base has a little bit more illumination, but they're both pretty similar in tone. Weekend has a lot less fallout than Base, and it's a lot less powdery than Base as well, but I still feel like the pigmentation is pretty similar. And then this second shade, Bottomless Mimosas here, is your more like bronzy gold shadow. That's a close dupe against the shade Summer in the Anastasia palette. Summer is a little bit more gold toned, but Bottomless Mimosas is almost identical. There's a little more pinkiness in Bottomless Mimosas, but they're pretty similar. The Brunch Babe shade I feel like is a little bit more creamy, and again less fallout than the Anastasia palette. And then this fourth shade here, this Excellent shade, this is a true bronze color. This was almost a spot on match for the shade Dazzling in the Anastasia palette. Again, they're both like true bronzy shades. They're both like really intense. I feel like the shade Dazzling is a little more reflective, but again, there's more fallout, and the one in the Brunch Babe palette is just more creamy and it goes on a little bit more smoothly. But the shade in the Norvina palette is just like more, it's just way more dramatic and just like an intense bronze shade. And then the shade Vignettes here is almost an identical dupe to the shade Incense. Incense I've been using like crazy as a transitional shade. I didn't think anything could match up to this. I just feel like it blends out so smoothly. You don't get any patchiness from it. I have just been loving it for an above the lid transition color. I didn't think anything could match it, but Vignettes is an almost identical dupe. You will get a little bit more, maybe a little bit more muddiness from it. It's a little harder to blend out, but the color is just as pretty, and it's just a perfectly like neutral toned soft brown shade for a transition color. If you like more of a smooth shadow, I think you would like the one in the Norvina palette a little bit better. This was a little harder to work with, but just go in light-handed and it goes on nice and smooth, and you'll get a nice sheer wash of color for a transition shade. So that's pretty close, just the formulas varied a little bit. And getting down to the second row here, this was the hardest row to dupe. So I didn't mention the shade Sunday Funday initially. I couldn't really dupe this one either. This is more of a silvery toned shade. You'll see it down here. Probably not one that I would reach for a lot. Kind of sheer. It's okay. I feel like I'm a little underwhelmed by it. It's pretty sheer. It's okay if you just want like a sheer wash of a silvery color over your lid. Maybe something for every day. There is a little bit of like a purple tone to it. So it's pretty, it's different, just something I probably won't reach for a lot. And then we get to these pinky shades. So Believe Me, we already talked about, I couldn't really dupe, but the shade Parfait, this actually looks a lot brighter than the shade Love in the Anastasia palette, but they actually swatch pretty closely. Love is a little bit more of like a dustier mauve-y pink color, and Parfait is a little bit more warm toned. Parfait goes on a little bit more sheer, and you're going to get an intense color payoff with Love. This is one of my, again, another favorite transition shade for me. Love that color, but just the uniqueness of the shade Parfait I really like. You do have to build it up a little bit, but you'll see on my try on, it looks identical to that shade Love on the eye. So yeah, I really like that. And then this shade Squad over here, this I duped against, what was it? You know what? I'm going to switch sides here. My arms are getting super tired. It's amazing how much a little palette could hurt your arms, but I don't know. Or maybe I'm just really out of shape. That's probably it. But anyway, back to duping. So this shade Squad is really close to this shade Wild Child. Wild Child is much more like intense. It's more like a neon pink, and the shade Squad has like a little bit more of like a bluey tone to it, more on like the silvery side. But this shade Squad, oh my gosh, I'm telling you, like you need this palette for this shade. It's so, look at that. So pretty. Oh my gosh, I love it. Let me swatch this real quick. Like, look how buttery and creamy that is. Now you'll see on my try on, it really accentuates the texture on my lids, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that it's such a gorgeous shade. I just love that. I think that's a really close dupe to Wild Child. That's just more, but it's just different. It's almost like holographic too. Like you can see the blue tones come out in it when you shift your arm. So pretty. I love that shade. And then the shade Tots down here, that's another one. That was the one I have on this arm. I didn't really find a close dupe to that. Reza was another one we didn't really have a close dupe to. Then the shade Waffles was really unique. It's almost like a taupey purple. This was pretty close to the shade, where was it? Drama in the Norvina palette. Drama is a little bit more on the purple side, but they swatch pretty closely. Drama is a little bit more intense and pigmented. I feel like it was really hard to build up the intensity of the color with Waffles. It's a little bit more on the sheerer side, but still a really pretty color. And then the shade Patio, this was a close dupe to the shade Volatile. So Volatile is a little lighter. It's almost like a grayish type color. It has more like of a taupey undertone. Really pretty, but I almost wish this was a little darker. I actually prefer the shade in the Brunch Babe palette, Patio. I feel like it was a little more intense. It's a little bit more patchy, but I just feel like I like the intensity of the Patio a little bit better. And then the last shade is that black. That's not in the Norvina palette. So that is it. So we duped how many? That was 8 shades we were able to dupe. So the Morphe palette is about half the cost of the Norvina palette. You're getting more color range and more than half the shades in the Norvina palette. So I think that's pretty good. A pretty close dupe. We'll get into the try on now. You'll see how I got this. This is the Morphe side over here. I think it looks pretty identical to the Anastasia side. So you'll see what colors I use, and then in the final conclusion you guys will see my final thoughts and what I thought about the formula. So yeah, hopefully you continue to watch. I know this is probably a long video. Okay, so I'm going to go for the Morphe eye on my right eye and then the Anastasia look on my left eye. So we'll go ahead and get started. I think I'm going to go for like a pinky brown eye. I want to go for a pop of color on the lid and then use, I don't know, maybe like a pretty pink as a transition color, and then maybe add some browns and purples, and I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Let me first go in with a neutral eye shade. So I'm going to go in with Weekend from the Morphe palette, just a neutral eye color. So I'm getting a lot of kick up from this, but I feel like not as bad as the Norvina palette. I'm not really seeing this show up on my lid at all. It's kind of exactly the same shade as my skin tone, which I'm fine with because, I don't know, I like a color just to even everything out to start with. And then from the Norvina palette, I'm going to go in with the shade Base over here. So this has the slightest bit of shimmer in here. Did you see that like big cloud of eyeshadow? Yeah, a ton of fallout in that Norvina palette. But I think as far as the neutral shade goes, I actually think I like the Norvina shade a little better. I almost like a little bit of illumination when you're starting with that neutral eye shade. I don't know, I just feel like it gives like something to the lid. So, alright, so from there, we're going to go ahead in with a transition color. So, on the right eye, again, I'm going to use the Morphe palette. So, I'm going to use this gorgeous shade Parfait right here. This shade is so gorgeous. I don't even know how to describe it. It's like almost like a reddish pink. So, this is pretty sheer. I'm not getting like a ton of pigmentation from it, but which is fine because I'm using it as a transition color. It's so pretty. I love this color so much. It's so fun. I love that. Okay. And then from the Norvina palette, I'm going to use the shade, I think it's called, yeah, Love. So it's a shade down here. This is more of like a dusty rose color. So you can see here all the kick up I'm getting, which is fine because you still get a ton of pigmentation from this color. So I don't really mind it as long as the shadow performs well and it's like not all over my face. So see, I'm not getting any fallout underneath my eye. So I can deal with a little fallout here and there. And look how pretty this color is. You definitely get more of a color payoff with this shade than the color from the Morphe palette. But they actually are showing up pretty equal in shade. This might be a little bit more pinky. This is just a little bit more warm toned. Okay, and then I'm going to define the crease a little bit. I'm going to go in with a deeper brown. So from the Morphe palette, I'm going to go in with a shade Vignettes. This looks like a true like soft brown to me. Looks really pretty. So you can see as I'm digging into the shadow, like I'm not getting a ton of kick up, a little bit, but not too bad at all. And I don't know if you can see the brush here, but you still get a lot of color payoff on the brush. So I'm just gonna go above the lid on the outer corner here. I feel like it's looking a little patchy and muddy, but not too bad. So I'm trying to just concentrate the color right in that crease space. I cannot for the life of me blend out this edge right here. See how there's like that dot? Alright, I'm just going to go in with a clean brush and just fluff that out a little bit. Okay, so that looks a little better. On the Norvina side, I'm going to go in with the shade Incense right here, using the same brush. These two shades were spot on for me. They're just both the perfect like neutral transition shade. Oh my gosh, and I have to ask you guys, how many of you out there watched the season finale of The Bachelorette this week? Oh my gosh, I was so excited that she picked Garrett. Oh my gosh. From the like first episode, I always loved him. I just thought he was so stinking cute. He was so like always sweet and sensitive, and you could just tell he has a kind heart. He's just the sweetest guy ever. How many times did he cry too? Oh my gosh. And how about every time he talked about Becca's dad, he would have like a tear in his eye. Just so cute. Oh my gosh. He's just so sweet and sensitive. He reminds me so much of my husband, like just really sweet, always happy, and I don't know, I just love his personality so much. And they're just so freaking adorable together. They make the cutest couple. I feel like at the beginning I was a Blake fan. Right, then I'm going to go on that outer corner with the shade Patio. This was one shade I was really impressed with. It's super dark, really pigmented. It's great for highlighting that outer corner and just like deepening your look up. Like look how intense that is, and I barely tap that in. Love it. Okay. And then on the other side, I'm going to go in with the shade Volatile. Again, these were two like spot on dupes, I thought. And then, oh, back to Blake. So I feel like I started to become a fan of him, and then as the season went on, I don't know, he just felt like smug to me and like kind of arrogant. There wasn't even like one specific thing he said, but I don't know, there was just this certain like arrogance to them. I don't know. Something about them. I just feel like they didn't fit well. I just feel like her and Garrett look so cute together and their personalities just mesh. So happy. They're just the cutest. That show is definitely a guilty pleasure for me. I think I've watched like every season. And then I'm going to do a pop of pink on the lid and go in with the shade Squad right here. This is that holographic pink shade that is absolutely gorgeous. I'm obsessed with this. I feel like you need this palette just for this color. It's so pretty. And check this out. When I'm tapping my brush in here, I'm barely getting any fallout. It's really creamy. You get a little bit, but not too bad. And it just goes on the lid so buttery smooth. It's just so pretty. Oh my god, look at that. So pretty. Oh, I love it. I'm going to try to amp it up a little bit and go in with my fingertip. I just feel like you can like up the pigmentation when you're dealing with lid shades just by using your finger. It just allows you to pack on color a little bit easier. Okay, and then for the Anastasia side, I'm going to go in with Wild Child. This again is also a really bright, cool toned foil pink color, but it doesn't have as much blue in it. It's more of like a true pink. This color is really pretty too, but it's super chunky and flaky. You really have to pack it on. So looking at the two sides, I feel like this is a little more purple. So I'm going to add some Celestial to that. I don't know, what do you guys think? Not an exact match, but I feel like it's pretty close. So I want to just define that lid a little bit more. For the lower lid, I'm going to go back into those pink shades. In Morphe, I'm going to go back into this Parfait shade. I actually like the look of that. I'm always afraid to put pink underneath my eye because sometimes I feel like you can bring out the red in my sclera of my eye. Don't mind my unplucked eyebrows, guys. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm a mess today. And also my hair I let air dry, so it's kind of frizzy and wavy and I don't know. And my nails I painted over an old polish job, so you can probably see all the ridges of my nails and I'm just a mess. Alright, and then on the other side, I'm going to go in with the Love shade. Again, this is my favorite freaking shade in that Anastasia palette. So here's the final look. I think it turned out really pretty. I love the cool tone shades. I love the purple shade. I love this, what is this called again from the Morphe palette? I'm obsessed with this shade. It did accentuate texture a little bit, but it's just so unique. This shade Squad on the lid. It's a really close dupe for Wild Child in the Anastasia palette, but even more creamier. Yes, it emphasized texture a little bit, but I don't know, I just feel like it's a really standout shade. I think it's so pretty and so unique. So my favorite part about this palette is the foils. I think they're so creamy and intense and pigmented. They don't have a lot of fallout, so they're really easy to work with. The mattes, the lighter shades, I feel like performed better than the darker shades. I felt like I got a lot of muddiness with this Patio. It was a little harder to blend out. These lighter tones over here went on really smoothly. They blend out really nicely. But again, I feel like the standout in here are these foil shadows. And also this shade Parfait. I think this is absolutely gorgeous. It's really unlike any shadow I've seen recently. It's just so pretty. I feel like Parfait is the shade that makes this palette. Just like how the shade Soul, and where am I right here? In this shade Soul in the Anastasia palette, I think this makes the Norvina palette. It's just so standout and unique. And we found that the Brunch Babe palette is way more on the cool tone side and a little bit more on the pinkier side than the Norvina palette is. You have a lot more options for warm tone shades with the Norvina palette, but there's so many shades in here that are almost exact dupes to the Norvina palette. It's not 100%, but I feel like it's a really close palette. The shadows perform really nicely. They have way more less fallout than the Norvina palette. I think this is an awesome option. Your money goes a long way. You get a ton of shadows in here, and I love the mix of just mattes and shimmers and just such gorgeous shades in this palette. If you're a cool tone fan like me, I think you would love this. It's just so pretty. Like, how freaking gorgeous. Not a 100% dupe. If I had to use a percentage, I don't know, maybe like a 75% dupe. We were able to dupe most of the shadows. You're not going to get the periwinkle shade from the Norvina palette in this palette, but you get this gorgeous Parfait shade. And as far as the formula goes, I think the Brunch Babe palette beats the Norvina palette with their foil shadows. The foil shadows are really creamy, really easy to work with. You don't deal with a ton of fallout. But with the mattes, I think I prefer the Norvina palette better. They're just really smooth. You don't have to deal with any muddiness at all. But in the Morphe palette, you do have a few shades that work really nicely. So the Weekender, or Weekend it's called, Rezo, and Toots or Tuts. They're really nice neutral shades, and I felt like they blended out really nicely and really easily. I didn't get any patchiness with them. It was more so the darker shades that were a little harder to work with, but the foil shades definitely, I think, beat the Norvina palette. But some of the shades in the Norvina palette you just can't beat. Incense and Love are two of the most like creamy, easy to blend matte shades that I've worked with in a long time. So, but for the price of this palette, I think you cannot beat it. It's a really close dupe to the Norvina palette, and I just love the shades in here. This pink shade Parfait is everything. This shade Bellini is perfect just for like an everyday look, just for all over the lid. I think it's so pretty. So yeah, I've been really enjoying this palette. Is it a close dupe to Norvina? Yes, but it's not a 100% dupe. But if you're more of a cool tone girl, maybe go for the Brunch Babe palette. If you like cool tone shadows but maybe want more options with warming up your shadow look, then maybe go with the Norvina palette. But I think this is a really close option. It's a really great dupe, and yeah, love this palette. I would definitely recommend. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you feel like they're close dupes? What do you think of the shade range of each of them? I'd love to know what you guys think. And let me know, are there any other palettes that are even closer dupes to the Norvina palette? I would love to hear. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. That's all I have for you today. And I'll see you guys in the next video. See you guys.